If you're interested in what I look like in real life and want to learn more about me, then follow my Instagram page at Joe the Insomniak. Me and my brother were on a mission together one day to go and locate an old house on our property. Now, my family had miles and miles of land. Much of it was forested and much of it was unexplored. It was dangerous to go out there alone in case you got lost or trapped. I mean, you could easily break your leg on something and not be able to get back for hours or days. But still, being outside was nothing new to us. When we both set off, we were both pretty young in our early 20s and didn't bother bringing our cell phones because we had walkie-talkies. We had some lights on us and a couple of torches, but not much else. We had a rough idea of where the property was. We had been informed by our parents that there were squatters there and it was our job to go and investigate. Because it is our land and somewhat feeling brave, we set off towards night. We are looking forward to the cool air and the moonlight. Now, as we were getting close to where we think the site is, we both stop hearing this weird screechy kind of sound. We're not fazed by it because we know that it's a weird animal out there. So we continue on. Now, I didn't say it to my brother, but I can't shake the feeling of us being followed or watched. I eventually mention it to him and he says he feels the same. We've realised roughly where we should be and eventually find it. And wow, great, there have been squatters here. There's graffiti everywhere. Now the building's old, but it looks like it's been ruined by them. It annoys us because we know it's going to be a challenge keeping them out. All we can do is board up the windows and doors and hope they don't return. Now while we're standing in there, we think that my dad's come. We radio him on the walkie-talkie, but only hear static in reply. What more is my brother's doesn't work. We call out and say, "Dad, you're right about this," but get no reply. We're confused because out the window we can clearly see somebody watching us. We come back down and call out for him again, but he's moved now. We think maybe he's headed back and can't hear us, so we start walking that way. We're maybe only 10 meters away from the house when we turn back and can see that someone's watching us through the window. We think it's our dad playing a prank on us, so we shine our torch to blind him, but the second we do so, the figure immediately vanishes. Now, I've never felt fear like it in my life. I let out a blood-curdling scream, dropped my walkie-talkie, and me and my brother sprint all of the way back. When we get there, our dad's waiting for us at the table asking why we look so scared. I used to work in a hole-in-the-wall gas station out in the sticks of Northern Carolina. I was freshly 18, had a crappy car, being newly promoted to assistant manager. So I was working many late shifts by myself. Now truthfully, I love to work alone. My boss is very laid back, and his philosophy was as long as the work gets done, do whatever you want. Plus we had a gun at the counter, which he taught me to shoot on my first day there. So even if I was there on my own, I felt safe. Now on this one particular night, it was extremely dead, so with my boss's permission, I closed the store early, hopping in my car. It was probably 11:30 to 12 AM by now. Other than being able to get out of work so early, this is my usual routine. Nothing seems out of the ordinary. I texted my roommate to let her know I was getting home early, so I light up a cigarette, then started my way home. For those of you who don't know North Carolina like me, I'm going to provide a little bit of background about the train. From where I worked to the gas station to where I lived, I had to drive down the back roads. These roads consisted of very dense woods on both sides. Sometimes, the woods were so thick, you couldn't tell where you were, especially at night. This could be intimidating for those who don't know the area, but honestly, I was worried about deers jumping out in front of me. But on this night, I wished it was just a deer. I'm driving down the road, blaring Nirvana, and just being a typical 18-year-old grunge kid. And I suddenly see something in the middle of the road, probably about 7 to 100 feet ahead. I think it's a deer. It looked too small to be a deer though, so I started the slow, gradual way down. I have to wear glasses when I drive, mainly at night, but my eyesight isn't terrible enough for me to make a habit of it. I grab my glasses and put them on. Now being able to see much more clearly, I'm terrified by what I see. It was a woman, an older one, wearing what appears to be a nightgown of some kind. Her hair was in disarray. She had her hands behind her back and was staring at me in the middle of the road, staring at my car. Let me remind you though, this is literally the middle of nowhere. There are trees as far as my headlights can shine, and it's midnight. I'm naturally paranoid, so all kinds of thoughts rush through my head. Why is she here? What does she want? And my doors are locked. And why is she out here? I honk my horn at her, but she doesn't reply. Now, I just sit there contemplating what to do with my phone out, but I realise I have no service. Now, this encounter went on for a while, just sitting in the middle of the road, mentally questioning what to do. It's now way past midnight. She's still standing there, just staring at me with this zoned out look, hands behind her back, as if she's observing me. I'm starting to get tired of this, considering that I had to be up early for work the next morning. So I honk my horn at her. I didn't expect what happens next. The woman's face turns from being spaced out to complete rage. She raises her arms up, looking like she was hiding something in her hands, lets out this horrid scream, charging on my car. As she ran closer, I realised she's holding something sharp. It looked like a knife or jagged piece of glass. During this moment of horror, I had a brief flashback to my dad giving me advice when I first got my license, which is, if an animal ever runs out in front of you, turn it into a bump bump. I love animals, so I couldn't bear to hear that, but now I think of his advice. Now, I hit the gas. She was running towards my car like she's gonna jump on the hood. I guess she realised I had the utmost intent to hit her, at which point she zigzags away from me and runs off into the woods. I'm still in flight mode. I didn't question what this woman wanted or where she went. I was glad she was gone and sped the whole way home. I got home at 1:30 and my roommate's still awake, waiting for me the entire time. She's extremely worried because it's way past when I should be back, and she's been calling and texting me. My roommate's aunt was a 911 operator who also happened to be working that night, so she decided to text her aunt to see if there's any silver alerts in the area. Immediately, her aunt texted back to say there wasn't. That alone gave me goosebumps to my core. There was no explanation as to where this lady come from. About 15 years ago, I lived in Sulphur, Oklahoma. My background, the Chickasaw National Recreation Area. I loved that park so much. I rode my bike for miles. I walked nearly every trail and rode every road. Every day, I would ride my mountain bike up and down the trails and would be home by nightfall most days. However, one night, I had rode out a bit further than normal. On my way back, however, I decided to ride the trail from an area known as Buffalo Springs, where they have buffalo roaming. Sounds so cool. As I was riding back, I knew the end of the trail was coming up, and I would have to cross a stone bridge across the creek up the road to my home. It was dark, and I had the full moon aiding me. If it weren't for that, it would be pitch black. I was maybe a few hundred yards from it when I got a sharp pain in my left thigh. I stopped and looked around to see what hit me. I heard a noise, sounding like something hitting the ground hard in front of me. There was a rock about the size of a baseball lying across the trail. I'm confused and begin looking up the side of this hill. Just as I turn my head to look, I almost fall off my bike when another rock comes flying down, hitting my front wheel. I finally have my eyes adjusted to look and see someone very tall, covered in hair at the top of the hill frying things screaming at me. I had this cell phone on me and yelled I was gonna call the police. Or at least that's what I made out. I didn't actually have one yet. This annoyed me, but he's more angry. He begins charging down the hill at me. For some reason, I froze, but snapped out of it. I lifted up my bike and took off. Just as I crossed the bridge, I heard a huge splashing noise in the creek and seen where a large rock's being thrown. I was in the clear to home, but was frightened all the way there. I went to the ranger station later the next morning and told the ranger I knew about what happened. He says, you think you're attacked by a Bigfoot? Me, I don't know what it was, but something was trying to hurt me out there. Okay, Justin, if I have any more Bigfoot, I'll let you know. I just said fine and left it at that. The very next week I was riding. The PR pulled up next to me and said, "Can you come in?" I said why, and he said he needed to show me something. We headed to the police department in town. Before we got out of the car, he returns and says, "I have a huge apology to make. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't believe a word you were saying at the time. It come to my attention though that a couple was out in the area that night, attacked the same way, seeing someone screaming at them throwing rocks and sticks. They called the police and they came out with some other rangers including myself. I immediately thought about what you said. When we arrived and head up the hill, sure enough, we have rocks being thrown at us. We have our guns drawn and are yelling. There's a 6'5" tall, naked guy covered in long hair. Apparently he escaped from the veteran center across the lake. Apparently he thought he's back in Vietnam trying to take out the enemy. I was very lucky because he was trying to kill me. We went inside so I could give the police my statement as to what happened. They had him sent to a more secure facility, and to this day I still get shivers when I hike the trail, and I always keep my eyes open up there. I've recently begun helping my mum selling my childhood home, and it sparked the memory of probably the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. So me and my friends were 15. I grew up in a subdivision about 20 minutes away from any towns. It was a very safe neighborhood. Streetlights on the corners, lots of kids, lots of classmates lived there as well. And there was never any fear of us walking to each other's houses or anything late. Now my subdivision was about 3 miles long, and I lived on the end of it. The last mile is a sharp right turn into a hill, with thick woods along both sides of the street, with 4 houses at the bottom, all surrounded by woods. My friend Maddie lived at the entrance to the subdivision. One year, we got about 9 inches of snow and ice. It shut down the roads, people were stranded, and schools are closed for a week. The first day of this snow, me, Maddie, and Kelly spent the whole day playing. We decided to have a big sleepover at Maddie's house at night. When the sun looked like it started setting, we started to trek down my house to get an overnight bag. By the time we finished packing, it was dark out. The wood always enhanced the darkness, but it didn't bother us. The 3 of us started walking, joking, enjoying the night air. As we cleared the top of the hill, we saw something that made us stop in our tracks. A hooded figure standing on the corner, illuminated only by the streetlight. They didn't move. They stood completely stiff, staring straight ahead. It was unsettled, but it easily could have been a neighbour, so with nervous laughs, we started descending the hill. The figure never moved straight ahead. As we got to the bottom, we could see the hood was fur-lined, and they had some sort of black mask hiding their features. We started to get nervous. By this point, it's pretty much blackout, only the streetlights illuminating the darkness. Now after staring at this figure for a good minute, Maddie called out, "Hey, stop messing with us." At this point the figure moves, only shuffling its feet to turn its body in our direction. They extend their hand towards us, and time stops. I can feel my heartbeat in my throat. This gestures to come here, before turning and running back to the woods. We then ran as fast as we could to reach Maddie's house, that bolted the door behind us. The next morning, when I walked home, I stopped at the corner where the figure had been, and felt pure fear. There's only 2 footprints, one leading in the woods, and one leading out of it. Last summer, I was camping with my partner and our 30-pound dog along a creek in a popular area in a nearby national forest. It was an established site, but not as a campground. It had a parking lot, firing, a nice flat area with access to the creek. Now in the dead of night, we were awoken by a large truck parked by our car just idling. Eventually 3 men get out. They enter our camp. They're talking quietly. The truck and creek makes us unable to hear what they're saying. I'm pretty sure it's not good though. Meanwhile, our dog has been growling loudly the whole time. Early on, I whispered to my partner to be quiet, hold the dog and hide. I got out of my sleeping bag and put my shoes on. The only thing I had to add defense was a forest axe, halfway between the hatchet and axe. Very useful for getting by in the woods. Now they took their time, perhaps as intimidation, but eventually got closer to our tent. I'd loudly popped the metal hatch, taking the sheath off, preparing to become an axe murderer. All three heard the latch. My assumption is they thought it was a gun holster, and they've run off, getting in their trucks, leaving without a word.